All right, let's talk about some stuff from the winter meeting. So, like we said, the winter meetings start Monday morning in Orlando. John will be there reporting live from the scene. I wish we gave you like a handheld microphone that had one of those little flags on it that said Gleeman and the Geek.
Yeah,
So you could be
that'd be
like
good. That'd be good. Yeah.
you could be like those weathermen standing out there in the middle of a hurricane or something like that, where it's like, yeah, I'm here from. Anyway, maybe next year we'll get
From
that
the
going.
bar. I'm
Yeah,
here.
right. I'm here. It's a little crazy. Dan Hayes has bought Jameson shots for everyone, but I'm gonna give it anyway. Not that he would ever buy shots, but he
Yo.
does drink Jameson. Little fact, little fiction. I like to blur them together.
That's it.
So Tuesday is the draft lottery, and that's only been going on since 2023. The Twins were the prime beneficiary of the first
Yes.
draft lottery, which I was there for. Where was that? Whatever. At one of the winter meetings 3 years ago. They moved up, I think, 8 spots, which was the most in MLB. They were supposed to pick 13th, if I'm not mistaken, and they ended up picking fifth in what was considered and has, I think, proven to be one of the deepest drafts in terms of kind of high end
Elite
number.
talent. Yeah.
Yeah, and Paul Skeens went number one, but
Right.
the Twins, from the moment they got the fifth pick, Sean Johnson, who runs their drafts and was their representative on stage on TV for the lottery, he was ecstatic. And you will rarely see
Right.
someone in another sport be ecstatic to land the number five pick.
Right.
But in this case, he felt, and baseball, the industry as a whole felt, that there were five players in that draft who were number one pick caliber in sort of a typical draft. And,
Right.
obviously Skeens was a special case, but the Twins ended up with Walker Jenkins with the number five pick, and now he's their best prospect, and he's reached AAA at 20 years old, and he's probably going to debut this upcoming summer at
Yeah.
21, and he's a consensus top 15, 20 prospect. Everybody, it's the industry has been right about the five guys in that
Yes.
draft.
Right.
Now, what's exciting, for this year is if you set aside how they got into this position, which is by losing a whole bunch of games,
Right.
they don't have to move up from 13. Right now, they entered the draft lottery in the number two position, partly because they had the fourth worst record. But like the Rockies are ineligible because baseball has set it up a little differently than, let's say, the NBA lottery, where you cannot just live in the lottery in
Right.
baseball. And I like that. And so if you've been in the lottery consecutive years, you get sort of booted out of the lottery. That's what happened to the White Sox 2 years ago when they had the worst record in baseball history
Yes.
and they picked 10th. And it's going to happen to the Rockies this time around when they had one of the worst records in National League history and they're ineligible for the lottery. So that benefits the Twins who move up a couple spots. So heading into the lottery, which is Tuesday afternoon, I think, they're in the number two position. So they got the number two, ping pong balls or
Second
whatever.
most, yeah, likely
Yeah.
to. Yep.
And the White Sox are number one, unfortunately. But so the way MLB has it set up is that the Twins have a 22.2% chance to get the number one pick, and then roughly a 20% chance to get the second pick or the third pick. So you're at like 60 something percent to get a top three pick. I think they're 92% to get a top six pick. I believe the lowest they can pick is seventh.
I think that's right.
And so that's what we're setting up here. Now, let's give some caveats about how the baseball works with the draft and prospects. It is not the same as winning the lottery in the NBA
Sure.
or the NFL. Not the lottery in the NFL, but having the number one pick in the NFL. Those guys can go bust too, certainly. But there's a sense that both in terms of long-term upside, but also kind of immediate impact in those sports, that those guys are almost always assumed to be able to jump right in, boost the team, show star potential, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the baseball draft varies in terms of quality, just like any other draft. There are some years, like we said, 2023, where it's like, wow, this is a great draft class. There are some years, this past year, for instance, where it was like, nobody even knows who the number one pick is. It's kind of a crapshoot. I would say that from talking to some people in other front offices and also just reading up on this thing, knowing the Twins are going to have probably a top five pick, this is on the good side in terms of overall quality of this draft class, but not like overwhelmingly so like 2023. And there is a clear-cut number one pick, but he's not considered in the class of like Bryce Harper or Paul Skeens or Steven Strasburg, where it was like, well, anybody a year out knows that this guy's going to be the number one pick. But the clear-cut top guy on everybody's board is UCLA shortstop. I'm going to probably botch this name, but Roch Cholowsky. Which it would be amusing.
Oh my God, what a great name.
Yeah, it's a good name. But also, I like the idea of the Twins firing Rocco Baldelli because the team was so bad, winning the lottery because of that bad record, and then drafting a guy named Roch
Cholowsky, yeah.
Yeah, I might be saying that wrong, but I believe that's how you say his name. UCLA shortstop. From everything I've read and heard about him, he's the legit shortstop defensively, has 30 homer power, high batting average guy, controls the strike zone, pretty good athlete, all this stuff. Like kind of a high-end all-around player who's been a superstar already in college. I think he's played 2 years in college so far. It sounds like pretty much anybody who wins the lottery is going to have him as their default choice at number one. Now, with that said, how the season goes for him, and especially for high school players.
Yes, right.
Because the number two guy is a high school shortstop, and a high school guy can jump a college guy sometimes, just in terms of how they're perceived. But it would be, what I'm saying is, it would be a good year to win the lottery.
Sure.
There's never a bad time to win the lottery, but there are some years that are better than others, and I would say this is probably in the 75th percentile, maybe 80th percentile in terms of years to win the lottery. Obviously, any team could use a star shortstop, but in the Twins case specifically, being able to draft a high-end, potentially star-level player who's a two-way player who can step in at shortstop probably within a year or two after being drafted could change the outlook of the franchise in a lot of ways more than even like what they could get in return for Pablo Lopez in a trade or Joe Ryan in a trade or even Byron Buxton in a trade. Like it might be comparable, but basically you're not going to get in any of those trades if they end up trading any of those three guys that I mentioned. We'll talk about that in a little bit too. You're not going to get a prospect.
You're not going to get a top 30 prospect, maybe.
Maybe you're not going to You're not going to get a prospect who would have been the number one pick in that year's draft.
Right.
That's just not going to happen. First of all, those guys are few and far between, but you're just not going to get that. Now, is the overall prospect package comparable if you get three prospects versus him? But what I'm saying is, like, for the amount of attention, and we're guilty of this too, obviously, paid to trade speculation and what could they get for this guy, there's going to be a 3-minute period on Tuesday in a ballroom in Orlando, Florida, where John will be there, where such a massive impact on the franchise is just going to be luck of the draw at that point. It's just going to be a random, event that they have 22% chance of. And, even getting second, third pick would be significant. You're going to be able to add a guy who, if not your best prospect, would probably be your number 2 or number 3 prospect. It's significant.
And welcome to the end of this video. There's lots more. For another, just click on one of these boxes.
Or click on this circle in the middle to subscribe to all of our Twins Talk.
Thank you.